The sleeves took me longer than they should have. I pressed them twice, then once more for the cuffs, chasing a crease that only I could see. When I finally buttoned the jacket, the medals sat where they always had, a small map of years that did not leave directions. My son texted the address and the time. Veterans Day luncheon, company lobby, casual. I read casual and still took the uniform out of its bag. Some clothes are not about dress codes. Some clothes are a promise you made to people who are no longer around to check. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and new carpet. Glass everywhere. A sign with his company name in white letters along a blue wall. I signed in and slipped on a paper badge that called me Kenneth Miller, Guest 11:57 a.m. The security guard glanced at the ribbons on my chest and nodded once. People in hoodies and sneakers moved like water around rocks, careful not to bump me but eager to get where they were going. My son found me with a smile that started in his mouth and did not reach his eyes. He hugged me with one arm, looked around, then adjusted the tilt of my cap like it was a picture frame slightly off-center. "Glad you made it, Dad," he said. They set up coffee over there. He walked me to a folding table that had a silver urn, cardboard cups, and 2 plates of wraps that had more lettuce than anything else. I poured coffee. It tasted like it had been brave once. Warm, not hot. I held it in both hands and let the heat work into my fingers. People came by in pairs. "Thank you for your service." "How long were you in?" "What did you do over there?" The questions were polite, like the applause you hear when a plane lands early. I answered with the short versions. Years, not stories. Places, not details. There's a way to talk about war in a lobby with a neon logo behind you, and it is mostly about not talking. A woman with a clipboard touched my elbow. "We will do a group photo in 10, she said. "If you could stand near the backdrop. Your son will join too." She pointed to a wall draped with the company logo repeated in a grid, step and repeat, like a wallpaper for pride. "Sure," I said. My son checked his watch. He drifted to a cluster of coworkers, laughing in a circle that had a clear edge. When he looked back at me, his face came back to neutral so fast I could feel the air move. I tried the coffee again. The lemon cleaner smell grew brighter as the sun found the glass. Somewhere a speaker system coughed. A man with a beard that looked deliberate tapped a microphone and made a joke about engineers and daylight. The room gave him a safe laugh. "Today we honor Veterans Day," he said. "We are lucky to have a veteran among us." He gestured toward me. Heads turned like flowers toward light, then adjusted when they saw the uniform. There is a second glance people give the first time they have to reconcile an image with their idea of modern life. I did not step forward. I just raised my cup a little. The man with the mic started clapping. The room followed. It came in like rain on a windshield, more sound than feeling. My son clapped too. He was watching the people around him while he did it, checking the tempo. The clipboard woman arranged us for the photo. I stood where she pointed. A young man with a camera stood crouched again, like the picture depended on finding my best side. My son slid in next to me, pulled his shoulders back, lifted his chin a degree. The flash popped 3 times. Someone shouted, "One more." We gave them one more after the photo. A product manager told a story about a new feature that would change collaboration worldwide. He said the word disruption like it was a virtue. People clapped again. The clapping for me and the clapping for him were different types of weather, but in a lobby they sound the same. When it was over, my son walked me toward the doors. The glass opened with a rush of November air that smelled like wet leaves. He kept going until we were past the smokers and the planters and the security camera with the blinking red dot. The parking lot was quiet in the way a stage is quiet when the crew has already struck the set. He leaned in. His voice was low and controlled, as if the words had been practiced in his head. "You embarrass me today," he said. "There are sentences that find a place to sit inside you right away. They do not knock. They do not take off their shoes. They just walk in and pull a chair up to the table." I looked at his face. Clean shave. New coat. The same 2 lines at the bridge of his nose that he had at 10 when he tried too hard at a thing that should have been easy. "How?" I asked. He spread his hands. "The uniform. The photo." People made comments. This is not that kind of company. I could have said a lot. I could have told him about a different kind of company where men stood for each other when there were no cameras. I could have told him about the weight of a friend's pack when his knee went bad and the distance back to the truck under a sun that gave no shade. I could have told him about the first time I wore this jacket and the last time one of my men did. Each sentence would have laid down like sandbags, one after another, building a wall that would keep the water out for a while and then fail anyway. "I did not mean to embarrass you," I said. He nodded once, like a manager closing a meeting. "Okay, I have a call in 5. You getting lunch?" "I will grab something." "Good," he said. He looked past me at his reflection in the glass. He fixed a flyaway hair that only he could see. "Thanks for coming." He was already turning back toward the doors when I said his name. He paused, half pivot, the way you do when you think someone is about to ask for a favor and you want to postpone it with body language. "Happy Veterans Day," I said. "You too," he said, and then he realized, and then he gave a tight smile like a knot pulled hard. The door side shut behind him. I stood for a minute and watched the flags on the little metal poles at the front steps pull at their lines. The coffee had gone cold in my hand. I took a sip anyway. Sometimes you drink what is there. The car was warm from the sun on the windshield. I sat and let the quiet come. The uniform felt heavier than it had in the morning, the way a wedding suit feels different after the reception, even though it is the same fabric. I reached up and unclasped the first medal. The pin made a small sound like a throat clearing. I set it on my palm and then on the passenger seat, one by one. Bronze Star, good conduct. The ribbon with the faded edge he used to touch when he was small and I would lift him over puddles. The seat held them steady. My hands moved slow, not reverent, just careful, like you handle glass that has a crack you cannot see. I opened the glove box. The hinge creaked. Inside was the manual, a gas receipt, a pen without a cap. A map I kept even though the phone did that now. I slid the medals in where the light from the lot caught them for a second, and then did not. The box shut with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. In the rearview mirror, I could see the blue wall, and the white letters of my son's company reflected backward, like a word you learn by spelling it in your head first. I sat there until the heat left the cabin and the glass fogged at the corners. When I finally turned the key, the radio came on low and lost between stations, a hiss that could have been wind in tall grass. I pulled out slow, checked for pedestrians, and joined the line of cars heading toward the street. Each of us finding our opening and taking it, one at a time. At home the quiet had its own temperature. The furnace came on with that familiar throat, clearing sound in the vents, and the folded flag on the mantel lifted a hair as if it were breathing. Up, down, up. The triangle of blue and white sat in its glass case, and when the blower stopped, it settled like a chest after a held breath. I stood there with my coat still on. The uniform hung from my shoulders in a way I could feel even without looking. I set my cap on the console table and turned the thermostat down 2 degrees. The furnace flag stilled. I turned it up. A soft rush through the duct. The fabric rose again by a whisper. It was a small trick of air, nothing mystical, but it made the room feel less empty. Someone else in the house. Even if only a folded cloth that remembered a man. The mantel had the things that never moved the flag, a photo of my son at 8 with a missing front tooth, a hand-carved box with 3 challenge coins, a thin black frame holding the Bronze Star citation. The paper had gone the color of tea around the edges. The frame had a nick that I never fixed. Somewhere near the bottom the words commendable and under fire sat together like 2 men who did not intend to be friends and were anyway. I took off the jacket and laid it across the back of the chair. The weight left my shoulders and settled on the room. I stood for a while, then went down the hallway to the closet that holds the things there is no place for. Behind a winter coat and a set of spare folding chairs sat the cedar footlocker. It used to live under a bunk. Now it lived under tax forms and a cardboard box of Christmas lights that only half worked. The metal latch lifted with a memory of its own. The lid came up on a slow hinge, and the smell of cedar reached me first, sharp and clean. Under the top layer of tissue, the boots waited. Sand still lived in the seams, fine as sugar. When I tapped one heel, a ghost of a road far from here came out, and made a small beige moon on the cedar bottom. The laces were stiff where a knot had been tied and untied too many times. There was a Polaroid in the shallow tray. 4 men squinting into a light that did not forgive. 2 in shirts, 2 shirtless, one with a bandage like a white bar on the forearm. One of them held up a finger like he had a point he was about to make. Every time I looked I expected to remember what the point was. Every time I couldn't. The faces hadn't changed since the day the camera spit them out, but the names had softened in my mouth with time, the way a coin loses its edges in a pocket. I set the photo upright against the inside wall of the lid. I took the Bronze Star citation from the frame and held the paper in my hands. There's a way a page feels when it has been read exactly as many times as it deserves. You start to know where the creases are without looking. I read the first line and the last line, the way I always do, as if the middle knows it can take care of itself by now. Past the paper, and the boots were little things, a piece of shrapnel I had kept against advice, a thin green notebook with 4 pages left, a pen that still wrote if you coaxed it, a letter from a mother who had never met me, but wrote my name like she had 2 dog tags on a chain that made the smallest sound when I moved them, not a ring but a dry whisper, like someone putting a cup down on a table and not wanting to be noticed. I lifted one boot and turned it in my hand. The leather had the kind of cracks that only come from heat and grit and time. I remembered the day I stopped brushing the dust off before Cho, because I realized it would be back before I finished chewing. Some kinds of dust are like that. They are patient. They know they will win. The furnace came on again. The flag rose. I set the boot down and closed the lid halfway, then stopped and pressed my hand to the cedar. The box might as well have been a chest. Breathe in, breathe out. I looked down at my hands. The lines across the palms had deepened. Dirt had lived in them once. Now the only thing that stuck was the smell of lemon cleaner from the lobby where I did not belong. I thought of the parking lot and the sentence that sat inside me now, already pulling up a chair. You embarrass me today. I let it stay. If I pushed it out, it would wait on the porch and come right back in the next time the door opened. On the shelf by the entry was a stack of note cards I used for practical things. Thanks for the casserole, neighbor. Yes, I got your message. No, that appointment time won't work. I took one and sat at the small kitchen table where the varnish had gone thin at the corners. I chose a pen that didn't need coaxing. I sat until the words came clear and honest. Proud of you. Always. I printed it slow, all caps, the way you do when you want a thing to read clean. No story. No explanation. I put his name on the outside of an envelope and slid the card in. The flap made that small gummy sound as it sealed. I laid it on the table beside my keys, so I would not leave the house tomorrow without it. I went back to the footlocker and closed it the rest of the way. The hinge made a last small protest, then accepted the work. I slid it back into its corner behind the coats and the folding chairs. The closet closed on the scent of cedar. In the hallway, the photos kept their own watch, school pictures, Halloween costumes, a team uniform with a number that he had insisted was lucky. In one frame his hand is on my shoulder, mid-teen, a little unsure of where to put it. I looked at the boy in that photo and the man I had seen in the glass at his office, and they were both there and not there in the way the flag was both cloth and breath. In the living room the furnace stopped. The flag rested. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark a minute to see what would glow without help. The face of the microwave held 741 like a small, stubborn sun. The neighbor's porch light pooled on the front steps. Out on the street a car door closed and a person laughed too loudly into a phone. Life went on, as they say, like a parade you can hear but do not see. I picked up the jacket from the chair and carried it to the bedroom. I took it off the hanger and laid it flat in its bag. I smoothed the sleeves, the way you do for someone who is tired. The metals were not there to shine. The fabric looked different without them, as if a word had been removed from a sentence, and now the rest of the line had to do more work. Before I zipped the bag, I touched the left side where the ribbons usually sat. Fingers on cloth, cloth on bone. There was no magic to it, only remembering. In the kitchen, I moved the envelope from the table to the bowl where I keep my wallet and spare change. I slid my car keys under it so I would have to lift the note to take the keys. Insurance against forgetting or losing courage. I poured a glass of water and drank half, then the rest. I rinsed the glass and set it upside down on a towel. Small order in a day that had not given much. Back by the mantel, I stood in front of the flag again. I rested my hand on the glass. My reflection looked back at me. Older, yes, but the same eyes that had learned long ago to take in what they must and put down what they could. The furnace started. The flag rose and fell. Not a trick I needed to prove again. I let it breathe. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. The ledger was older than the phone that now did the same job without ink. A blue notebook, ruled lines, months stacked like fence boards. I opened it to the first page with his address written in my careful block letters. The date was 2 decades ago. The memo line on the first check read mortgage. The second same. By the fourth I had started adding small notes. Roof insurance. Rate jump. He will pay me back when the promotion comes through. I ran a finger down the columns. 12 checks, then a little space, then 12 more. The pages darkened where my hand had rested over the years. A number lives differently on paper. It does not scroll. You have to meet it where it stands. I took the calculator from the drawer, the one with keys that clicked like a toy, and did the easy math anyway. 20 years. 12 months. 240 taps, total displayed, blunt and square. I wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it to the corner of the ledger, as if seeing it in yellow would make it less. Back then the payments were checks with carbon copies that left a faint bruise on the page beneath. Later they were money orders that the teller slid back to me with a receipt. These last years the bank app carried them out like a quiet butler. On the screen the transfer sat there polite and ready, repeating on the first of the month. Next scheduled. December 1. My thumb hovered over the edit button. I did not press it yet. I drove to his house in the late afternoon and parked across the street. The siding had been replaced since we raised the walls. New color, a gray that made the white trim show off. The maple we planted in the front yard had learned how to give shade. A scooter lay on its side near the driveway. The porch light was already on, though the sky still held a little blue. The walkway was the one we poured with our own forms. I could see the spot near the third step where a bubble in the concrete had popped, and I had smoothed it with my thumb while the mud was still soft. The front door had a glossy new finish and a doorbell with a small camera that stared without blinking. I remembered when the only thing watching you was a neighbor behind a curtain. He opened the door before I could knock. He had a dish towel thrown over his shoulder like he had meant to look busy. Behind him the kitchen made the sounds of dinner, metal on ceramic, water on a hot pan. My grandson yelled something from upstairs that sounded like a victory or a protest. Hard to tell the difference at that age. "Dad," he said, smiling with most of his face. "You should have texted. We could have met somewhere. I was nearby," I said. Thought I would return a book. I held out a paperback I had found on my passenger seat as if it were a plan we both knew about. He stepped aside. "Come in. We are doing tacos." The kitchen had the same bones we built, but the muscles were new. Granite where we once had laminate. A stainless fridge that could have been a small elevator. The window over the sink was the one we framed while the rain came sideways, and both of us laughed because the level said our work was true. The laugh had sounded like relief then. Now it sounded like memory. I set the book on the island and leaned on the edge. He flipped tortillas in a pan with a pair of tongs. The tongs clicked. The smell was good. "I was going through some old paperwork," I said. "Bank stuff?" He nodded without looking up. "You love your spreadsheets." "Ledger," I said. "Before spreadsheets." He smiled at the pan. "Right, I added it up," I said, and I did not say the number out loud. 20 years. He turned then, tongs in hand. Towel on his shoulder like a stripe. "Dad," he said in a tone that was meant to be gentle, and turned out sounding like a teacher telling a student to sit back down. It was not a big deal. It helped you feel needed. The sentence landed without a run-up. He put the tortillas on a plate and reached for the next thing, as if nothing had been said that could not be wiped off with the counter. I looked past him into the living room. The photo frames on the wall were straight. The couch had the indent of a family. The television held a paused cartoon mid-shout. A line of little shoes sat just inside the door like a punctuation mark. I could point to a dozen places my hands had touched when this was a pile of material and a promise. The bottom stair that creaked because we had to shave it a hair to make it fit. The stud behind the switch where I wrote his initials in pencil because he was too little to reach but wanted to help. The studs do not forget, even when you cover them with drywall and paint. "I am glad it helped," I said. My voice was even, like a level finding its bubble. He poured something from a jar into a pan and the kitchen hissed. "You know what I mean," he said. "You always like to take care of things." "I do," I said. "But sometimes the thing gets taken for granted and you do not notice until someone points at it and calls it a habit." He wiped the counter. "We are fine now. You do not have to make a thing of it." I looked at my hands. They were clean from the sink at home. You can wash a lot off if you take your time. "I am not making a thing," I said. "I am finishing one." He checked the time on the stove and then his watch, as if 2 clocks would hurt his day better than 1. "Okay," he said. "Can you stay for tacos? Another time," I said. "I will leave the book." On the way out I paused at the porch post. I had set that post with him leaning his small weight against it to keep it from wandering while I drilled the first pilot hole. He had been serious about the job. He had put both palms on the wood like a prayer. In the truck I opened the bank app. The transfer sat there, patient as always. I tapped edit. Choices appeared. Change amount. Change date cancel. There was a small line in gray under the options that read or end after next payment. I tapped that. Confirm came up in a box. The box asked me twice as if it knew I might be trying courage on to see if it fit. I chose the end I could live with, one more. Then none. Back at the kitchen table at home. I took the ledger and, on the next empty line, wrote the date that was coming and the word final. Not underlined, not circled. The kind of final that understands what it is and does not need decoration. I peeled the sticky note with the total off the corner and stuck it on the inside of the cover where I would not see it unless I went looking. The printer coughed out a page with the bank's confirmation. I folded it and slid it into an envelope with a clean window. On the memo line of a new check, I wrote "Last kindness." Then I crossed the words out and left the line blank. Some notes are for you, not for the person cashing them. I called the bank anyway, because sometimes a human voice makes a decision feel like it really happened. A recorded woman thanked me for being a valued customer. A man came on and read a script about options. I gave him the date. He asked me to verify the last 4 digits of my social. I did. He told me the series would end after the next payment. His voice had the steady calm of someone who helps people turn lights off every day. When I hung up, the house settled in around me. The furnace took its breath and let it go. The clock over the stove walked past 7. I rinsed my coffee mug from earlier and wiped the ring it had left. In the living room, the flag rose a touch, fell a touch. I drove by his house once more that week when I had an errand that did not really require me to pass that way. The porch light was on. The maple moved a little in the wind. 2 bikes leaned against the garage. I sat long enough to see the inside light switch on, and then off again. Someone laughed. The doorbell camera watched. At home, I put the ledger back in the drawer. I placed the bank printout beside it. I set the calculator on top. I did not need to add anything else. From somewhere down the block came the hollow thwack of an aluminum bat meeting a ball, the kind of sound that carries even when you cannot see the field. A boy cheered. Another answered. I looked at the calendar on the wall where someone had written Saturday. Game. I made a small mark next to it, the size of a promise you planned to keep. The field lived between a water tower and a church, a square of green where the town had agreed to spend its Saturdays. Chalk lines crossed like promises. Aluminum bleachers sat in rows that remembered other seasons. A cart near the fence steamed over hot dogs, the smell drifting along the baseline like a lazy inning. I got there early and took the second row, where you can see the strike zone without leaning. The dust on the infield had already found its way to the outfield grass and made a pale apron near second. Kids in uniforms that fit like costumes jogged and tripped and laughed because their bodies had not yet learned the price of falling. A coach in sunglasses bounced a baseball off his palm, each catch a small pop of certainty. My grandson trotted from the dugout with his cap crooked, his jersey tucked in like he meant it. He glanced once at the bleachers, scanning faces the way a person looks for home in a crowd, then settled his helmet on with 2 hands and knocked his knuckles together, once like a secret drum roll. Parents slid onto the benches around me, cups in hand, sunglasses at the ready. I heard all the old phrases arrive and take their seats. Good eye, hustle. That is okay, kiddo, next time. Little league is a choir. Everybody knows the words. He came up behind me and touched my shoulder, my son. He wore a team shirt that said Stay F on the back, and the letters looked official even though I knew they were ironed on in a kitchen last week. Hey, he said low. Thanks for coming. Would not miss it, I said. He sat 2 spaces down with an empty spot between us, the polite kind of distance that says both thank you and do not. A mother and a son visor slid in front of us and started a conversation about snack duty that seemed to require advanced logistics. The first pitch of the game made the good sound, leather greeting leather. I clapped, one sharp clap, more reflex than plan. Nice pitch, I said, so the field could hear. My voice carried because it has learned to carry. Heads turned a little, the way they do when a sound stands up instead of sitting down. My son gave me a sideways glance as if the volume knob lived on my throat and he had a hand on it. I tried to keep still. Baseball has a way of winding you up if you let it. A grounder to short. A throw that sailed. A kid at first stretching like a man, then remembering he is 9 and grinning at the sky. I clapped again at the hustle. You cannot help it when you have spent years praising the work, not the outcome. Good eye, I said when my grandson let a bad pitch go. Way to watch. My son's jaw flexed. He leaned in my direction without leaning all the way. You can cheer, he said with a smile that had too many teeth. Just softer. Copy, I said, and I meant to keep it light. But the word came out like muscle memory. An inning later, my grandson came to bat. He choked up on the handle like he had been taught, toes touching the back line of the box. The pitcher was the kind that thinks speed is courage. First pitch high, second low. My grandson checked on both, 2 balls. The dugout clapped the way kids do off the beat and perfect anyway. Attaboy, I said, before I could stop the shape of the word from finding my mouth. My son raised a hand then, palm out, traffic cop calm. He did it with a smile, and the smile made it worse. Please do not make it about you, he said. The sentence was quiet but tidy, like something folded and stored for this exact use. A father 2 rows back cleared his throat in that way that says he is not involved and very much is. A woman in front looked at her phone harder than the phone required. I felt the aluminum under me turn a degree colder. I looked at my grandson. He had stepped out of the box to tap dirt from his cleats. He did not look toward us, which is its own kind of looking. He rolled his shoulders, breathed, and then, so small it could have been a fidget, tapped 2 fingers twice on his thigh. Tap, tap, like a man in a photo with no name would do if he had only his hands left to talk. I put my own hands together, not for clapping, but just to keep them. I sat on them, actually, palms warming aluminum. The hot dog cart hissed like a quiet reminder to eat. A breeze came up from right field and laid the outfield grass in one direction. Then let it stand again. The pitcher threw one down the middle. My grandson swung and fouled it off. The ball kissed the top of the chain. Lincoln dropped into the dust. He tugged at his helmet, put his feet back where they belonged, and nodded only to himself. People say calm down like it is a thing you can pick up at the concession stand. My son leaned back and exhaled, relief already rehearsing its entrance. I did not say a word. I wanted the bat to do the talking. It did. The next pitch came in honest. He met it honest. A line drive that smacked the left center gap and rolled just long enough for him to remember he had legs and use them. First base. Second. The coach windmilled an arm that could have powered a small town. He took the turn and stood up tall into third, dust rising around his shoes like a small storm delighted to find him. The bleachers forgot their manners and stood. I clapped with them, 3 soft claps, the way you clap in church when the soloist surprises you. My son kept his hands on his knees and let the cheering wash by. On third, my grandson looked toward the dugout, not the stands. The coach gave him 2 fists at his waist, the coach's language for stay. My grandson did not look for me. He lived entirely in the triangle of bases and whatever comes next. That is the gift of being 9. Your world is exactly the size of your current reach. He scored on a dribbler that did not deserve to be an RBI and trotted back to the bench with the careful swagger of someone pretending not to float. His teammates slapped his helmet, each tap a little right. He found the end of the bench. He sat. And then, when the coach's backs were turned and his father had leaned in to argue a called strike with a friend, he looked out from the bench to the bleachers at nobody in particular and did the tap again. 2 fingers. Twice. The tiniest salute. If I had blinked, I would have missed it. I nodded once, as if we had agreed on something. Maybe we had. Keep your voice when you can. Keep your seat when you must. The game went on. The sun slid behind a cloud that made the whole field look like a photograph you find in a drawer. Somewhere behind the backstop a toddler dropped his juice box and the straw made a sad little noise. The umpire's mask reflected a triangle of sky when he turned his head. The hot dog steam thinned and then started up again as if the cart had remembered it had a job. Between innings my son stood and stretched. He looked at me as if he were waiting for me to argue, to push, to make a scene so he would be required to be the man who put the scene away. I did not give him that job. I leaned back, let my shoulders find the cool of the bench, and watched the chalk gather at the corners of the base like snow that has chosen its form. When the last out came, it came quiet. A pop fly that everybody wanted and nobody owned until the smallest kid on our team startled even himself by catching it. The field held a breath. Then it released one. A cheer rolled out that only Little League can make, high and messy and pure. We packed up our sounds. People folded chairs. Kids chased each other with gloves on their heads. I walked the slow way along the fence, fingers tracing the cool wire to feel where the field stopped. My son collected bats and helmets with an efficiency I recognized from a different life. He did not look up. I did not ask him to. At the gate I paused to watch my grandson dig at third base with the toe of his cleat, trying to make the bag sit flatter for the next team. He tamped it twice with his foot, tap, tap. Then he jogged off, helmet tucked under his arm, his cap back on crooked, his small face serious. The way you are serious when the thing you fixed will outlast the time anyone notices you fixing it. I turned toward the parking lot. Aluminum cooled behind me. The hot dog cart shut its lid and the steam rose in a last silver ribbon, then disappeared into the same air we all share. The email landed with the small bell I never turned off. Afternoon light came in low and turned the laptop screen into a pond. I angled the lid until my face slid off the reflection and the words sharpened. Subject: Awards Dinner Logistics. From my son, 3 lines. 2 for time and place, 1 for me. No uniform at the company awards dinner.
No, please.
No explanation. Just a fence post put in the ground. The cursor blinked in the reply window. It blinked like a metronome no one else could hear. I rested my hands on the warm palm rest and let the heat soak into the places that ache when the weather changes. I typed the first draft fast, as if speed could keep me from saying too much. It was all facts. That I had worn the uniform on Veterans Day because the event called for it. That a dress jacket is not a costume. That I did not carry it to be seen, only to keep a promise. I read it once and felt the weight of every brick in it. I selected the whole thing and hit delete. The words vanished. The cursor blinked like it had been waiting for me to remember the difference between truth and ammunition. Second draft humor that was not funny. Jokes about dress codes, about how business casual ranks next to trige in lives that once ran on checklists. A line about how I own one tie that does what it is told. I read it and saw a man trying to be liked at his own kitchen table. I deleted that too. The page went white again. Blink. Third draft a story. Not long. Just the time I slipped a starched collar under a flak vest, because my men needed to see something still looked right. I wrote the last sentence and sat with it. It tasted like a thing you set on the counter and realize is past its date. I dragged the words to the corner and let the trash can take them. The laptop fan spun up and then calmed down, as if it had breathed with me. The screen held its stare. The house said nothing back. I stood, rubbed my eyes, and crossed to the closet. The uniform bag hung there behind a line of shirts that do not matter. I touched the zipper through the plastic. The feel of teeth against my knuckle took me back to a morning long ago when a boy pressed 2 fingers to a ribbon on my chest and asked why it was that color and not another. I told him the color has a story. He said he liked that the story stayed where people could see it. He was small enough then to believe visibility and safety were the same. On the entryway table, under the bowl that holds my keys, lay the bank envelope from last week. The clerk had printed the words I asked for. Mortgage support series complete. 0 due. Then she had reached for the rubber stamp she keeps under the counter and brought it down hard, to make the ink find the paper all the way through. Paid in full. I heard it again now, the stamp hitting wood under thin paper. A sound like a period landing. A sound with a little thud at the end that says there will not be a next page. I carried the envelope back to the table and took out the receipt. Red block letters, the date, the account, the total that has lived in me so long I could feel it move around like weather. I laid it flat. I took out my phone. The camera caught it square. I cropped the edges tighter, left the stamp whole. I checked for glare. None. Save. Back at the laptop, the cursor kept faith with time. Blink, blink. I placed the photo into the reply, where attachments sit like folded shirts. In the body, I typed a single word. Understood. I looked at the word until it stopped looking like a door closing and started looking like a hand leaving a doorknob. I added a period. Then I removed it. The absence of a dot felt more honest. I hovered over send long enough to be the man who double-checks a safety before he sets a thing down. Then I clicked. The little whoosh went off, cheerful and thoughtless, the same sound for shopping lists and goodbyes. I sat there and watched nothing happen. The laptop returned me to the inbox like a host who shows you a hallway after he has taken your coat. I waited for the 3 gray dots that mean someone is deciding how to answer. Nothing. The glare returned to the screen and brought my face back with it. The house had a few jobs to do and did them all without me. The furnace came on. The flag on the mantel lifted and rested. Somewhere a neighbor's dog asked to be let out and then immediately reconsidered. On the counter my ledger sat under the calculator like a stack of years wearing a small hat. I slid the drawer open and took the ledger out just to feel its weight. I thumbed to the last entry. Finding my handwriting kept its line. The email chimed again. One new message. From him. Thanks. Dress code is business casual. Starts at 6. There will be valet. That was it. No mention of the photo. No change in the temperature of his tone. I pictured him at his desk, one window holding meetings. One holding sports scores, one holding the message where he moves his father around like a calendar item. I pictured his thumb grazing the screen, the way people approve an expense report in the time it takes water to run hot. I closed the laptop and let the lid find its magnet. The small click felt like a stamp too. Not as loud, same clarity. I put the receipt back in the envelope and returned the envelope to its place under the key bowl. If he wanted to pretend the attachment was accidental, I had given him the chance. If he wanted to ask, he knew how. In the bedroom, I took out a plain sport coat and a shirt that would pass. I set them on the back of the chair where the uniform had rested last night. The fabric looked lighter because it was. I laid a tie across the seat, the one with the tiny blue dots that never argue with a white shirt. Business casual, as requested. Terms accepted, but not the premise. I stood in the doorway and looked at the two jackets living a foot apart. One meant service. One meant dinner. Both were clothes. Only one had a story deep enough to be heavy in a bag. Before the light went, I drove to the post office with no mail to send. I just wanted the long counter and the hum of people deciding what goes where. A man ahead of me asked if his box would make it to Idaho by Friday. The clerk said if it mattered, he should pay for the version that guaranteed it. He did. The clerk pulled out her stamp and brought it down. Paid. I felt the echo in my palm like a remembered handshake. Back home I took the envelope out a second time, the way you open the fridge again, just to see if what you want has appeared. It had not, but what was there would do. I slid the phone beside it, screen dark. I told myself not to check for reply. I checked for a reply. Nothing evening came in through the blinds like a quiet tide. I made coffee because I wanted the ritual, not the caffeine. I drank half a cup and left the rest. The cursor on the sleeping laptop did not blink anymore. The house blinked instead, the porch light on a timer, the microwave's dim numerals, the neighbor's motion sensor catching a cat mid-career. At the closet, I unzipped the uniform bag enough to let my hand in. I smoothed the sleeve, a gesture as automatic as prayer, then closed it again. I put the sport coat on a hanger and left it outside the bag, air on wool. I did not touch the metals. I did not need to. I had already sent the only thing that needed sending. When I turned off the lamp, the room kept its shape. Somewhere far away a band practiced in a school gym for a ceremony that would not require me. Brass and drum in the cold. I could almost hear it. Count off. 1 and 2. Step. Hold step. I washed the coffee cup, set it upside down on the towel, and listened for the soft thud a cup makes when it decides it has found its place for the night. It came. Small. Certain. I dried my hands. The envelope waited by the door with the keys on top. Tomorrow has its own rules. Tonight I kept mine. The neon in the window stuttered like a tired throat. Mu-e-b-a whale. Then W-b-y-o, then W-b-y again, 3 red letters, working harder than the rest. I stood on the sidewalk with my medals in a sandwich bag, the kind you use for a Bologna sandwich that always tastes a little like the refrigerator. The plastic fogged where my thumb pressed. The weight was not much. It was not nothing. Inside, the air conditioning had that recirculated cold that belongs to places where value is argued. Guitars hung on the wall like promises that did not keep. A glass case held watches, a stack of cameras, 3 wedding bands lined up like a sentence that loses a word each time you read it. A sign near the register said no firearms. Another said we pay cash today. Another said all sales final in a font that liked its job. The bell above the door coughed once when I pushed it, then fell silent like it had used up its voice for the day. A man behind the counter looked up. He wore a black T-shirt with a dragon on it and had a pencil tucked behind his ear like a habit he could not quit. He glanced at the bag in my hand, and his eyes did a little math. Not the kind you do on paper, the kind you do to decide how long a thing will take. "What can I help you with?" he said, no question mark. I set the bag down on the glass. The metals clinked against each other, small and dry, a sound like coins dropped into a church's donation box, when nobody is looking. He pulled the bag open and slid the contents out with 2 fingers, careful to touch as little as possible. Ribbon, bronze, a shape cut from years. He turned the bronze star over once, twice as if the back might have more to say. He did not read the star. He weighed it. He put it on a little digital scale that blinked blue numbers like a car stereo. "Not gold," he said. "People think metals are gold. They are not." He tapped the scale. "Brass, mostly. You cannot melt the ribbon." He put the good conduct there too, the service medals, the campaign ribbon. Numbers danced. He made the pencil talk in a spiral notebook. "For the lot," he said. "I can do 40? $40. I said, as if putting the word after the number would make the number choose a better word. He shrugged. "Scrap price. You want more, you take it to a collector, maybe. But they will ask for provenance. Certificate, pictures. A story." He smiled like the word story bored him, but he had learned to say it because customers liked it. Or you could sell the display as a set. Presentation helps. Presentation helps. A sentence that could decorate a wall in a company lobby. He pushed the medals toward me in a neat little pile, like a dealer returning cards you cannot play. Behind me, a boy traded a game console for a wad of bills he unfolded and counted twice. A woman argued over the price of a ring, her voice too loud for the size of the room. The neon flickered at the edges of my vision. "Do we buy? We buy! We!" I looked at the medals on the glass. The scale was still on, waiting for the next thing to tell the truth about itself in ounces. 40, I said again, but quieter, because the number had already done its work and did not need help. He spread his hands. I am not trying to be disrespectful, he said, and now the question mark showed up. I am telling you the math. I nodded like a man who appreciates honesty even when he does not. I picked up the star. It was lighter than it had any right to be. My thumb found the tiny groove where the pin had always caught the cloth, just so. I set it back down and the ribbon fluttered and stopped. I thought about opening the bag and pouring them in with emotion so fast I could not change my mind. Let the man count out 220s and slide them across the glass. Walk to my truck with cash folded tight in my fist like a decision. Go to a diner. Order a sandwich that tastes like nothing. Go home to a mantel where the flag still breathes under the vent and the frame holding the bronze star citation looks around for the thing it used to accompany. Instead, I put my hand flat on the glass until I felt the cold through my palm. No, I said. The man nodded, not surprised, not moved. He had seen the moment before. He had seen it go both ways. He slid the medals back toward me with the gentleness people use when handling someone else's photographs. You change your mind? He said, and he said it like time was a tool. We are here. I dropped the medals into the bag, and the plastic made that dry whisper. I zipped the line closed with my thumbnail. The bell coughed once when I opened the door, and then I was outside again, the heat softer than the cold had been. In the truck, the bag sat on the passenger seat, where a person might sit. The sun coming through the windshield made the ribbons look both brighter and thinner. I thought about refrigerating value. I thought about value keeping without electricity. Traffic on Main moved like a polite river. I pulled into it and let the town carry me. I did not point toward home. I did not point toward the company office with its blue wall and lemon cleaner. I turned where the hand on the wheel wanted to turn, and before I had practiced a reason I was looking at a low brick building with a worn flag out front and a sign that said middle school in letters that had been painted too often to hide the past completely. The front doors were locked. A tape paper said all visitors must ring. I pressed the button and the little speaker above it made a tired buzz like a locust that forgot it was supposed to be asleep. Yes, a voice said, the kind that has spent a lifetime deciding how to sound friendly and cautious at the same time. I am here to see the principal, I said. I have something for your history hall. It came out without rehearsal. After I heard the words, I believed them. A pause long enough to measure a person. Name, I gave it. The second pause was shorter. The door clicked, and then the metal bar gave under my hand. Inside smelled like pencil shavings and floor wax, and something sweet that had been spilled and wiped, but not entirely gone. Posters lined the hallway. Be kind. Own your effort. A schedule for a band concert with a clip art trumpet. A paper flag made of handprints. Small palms layered in red and white around a field of blue construction paper stars. The office window had the kind of speaker grill that makes you feel like you are at a bank, even when you are asking about picture day. A woman with reading glasses on a chain looked up. She smiled. The smile school secretaries learn that says I run this town, and you are welcome here if you behave. Principal's in with a parent, she said. You can have a seat. I sat on the plastic chair that had been designed by someone who believed posture is a virtue. Down the hall a locker slammed, then opened again as if it had forgotten something. A boy in a sweatshirt walked past, carrying a trumpet case like it contained a future he was willing to practice for. Somewhere a whistle blew and a chorus of sneakers answered on tile. I set the bag on my knee. The medals made no sound now. I pressed my thumb along the zipper and felt the ridges through the plastic, the way you check a seam that once held and will hold again if you ask politely. Through the office door window, I could see the edge of a display case with science fair ribbons and a photo of last year's spelling bee champion holding a certificate bigger than his chest. The glass caught a thin line of fluorescent light and threw it back like a promise. When the buzzer on the office door sounded, it sounded the same as the one that let me in. The secretary waved me toward the inner hall with 2 fingers. He can see you for a minute, she said. I stood and, without thinking about it, smoothed the front of my shirt the way I would have smoothed a jacket before walking into a room where rank matters. I picked up the bag. It was light. It was not nothing. Down the short hallway, kids' art watched me. A field of suns, a flock of birds that looked like check marks, a portrait of a dog that had lived only in a child's wish. I reached the door with the brass plate that read principal. My knuckle hovered for a second over the wood. Behind me the office phone rang, and the secretary said good afternoon in a voice that made the day sound like it could still choose its mood. I knocked. The door opened. I stepped in with the bag in my hand. A man who had found out how much a thing was worth in dollars and decided to measure it in daylight instead. The principal had a careful face and a tie with tiny acorns on it. A binder lay open on his desk, tabs like small flags. He looked at the sandwich bag in my hand, and then at me the way a man looks at a tool he did not expect to need and already knows how to use. "Are you a parent here?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I have something that belongs to kids more than it belongs to a mantel." He waved me in. I set the bag on the wood. The metals slid against each other with that dry clink that sounds like memory choosing to speak. He did not touch them at first. He stood, came around the desk, and lowered himself to eye level with the ribbons, as if he were reading a name he could not quite make out. "We have a history hall," he said. "A display case by the library. The students pass it every period." "That will do," I said. We walked the short corridor. Posters talked about kindness and finishing strong. The case stood halfway down. Glass doors locked with a key the secretary produced from a chain at her waist. Inside, a row of yearbooks, 2 science trophies, a photo of a class planting trees when the town lost 3 in a storm. He unlocked the doors and slid one panel aside. The metal runners made a sound like a zipper deciding to be patient. He reached into his pocket and brought out 4 small brass screws. "I keep extras," he said. "Shelves always need moving on a school day." We cleared a section. He lifted the glass shelf and set it 2 notches lower. The screws turned under his small screwdriver with a sound that belonged to work done right. I went back to the truck and returned with the uniform bag. I had driven home and brought it without telling myself I was doing that. Some errands named themselves on the road. He held the jacket like a question. I set it on the lower shelf, shoulder square, fabric smoothed. On the upper, the metals, not in a row, but in the order my hands remembered pinning them. We stood there and let the air settle. "This will teach better than any textbook," he whispered. He was not talking to me. He was talking to the hallway. He reached toward a drawer beneath the case and pulled out a strip of cardstock and a little holder. "We can print a nameplate," he said. "You deserve the credit." "One condition," I said. "No nameplate." He stopped. The screwdriver hung in his fingers like a note held too long. He looked at my face, then at the jacket, then back. "Anonymous. Let it be from someone who cared enough to leave it here." He nodded. He slid the cardstock back into the drawer and closed it with his palm. "We will note only the branch and the years," he said. "The rest can be questions." Back in his office, he opened the binder to a form with boxes. Donor. Description. Condition. I filled the page like a man writing a grocery list he already knows by heart. Where it asked for name, I wrote no name. Where it asked for purpose, I wrote for study, for gratitude, for quiet. He initialed the bottom and dated it. The pen made a small click when it capped. He handed me the pink copy and kept the white. When we walked past the case again, a stream of students moved down the hall between bells. A girl slowed. A boy slowed because she did. They looked in, then looked at each other, then back. The principal stood a step away, not introducing anything. I stood farther than that. He slid the glass shut. The lock took the key with a soft catch. The brass screws held. The hallway breathed its steady school breath. I left before the next bell. Behind me, shoes outnumbered voices. Ahead, daylight decided the floor was worth brightening. I kept my hands empty and let the click of the case follow me down the hall until it disappeared into ordinary sound. He texted late afternoon. "Come by at 6. I'll pick up a chicken." I arrived to the smell every grocery keeps under heat lamps. The bird sat on a plastic tray that tried to pretend it was a platter. My chair was at the corner of the table, one edge away from the head and one edge away from the kids. A place you give a guest you know too well. Plates. My daughter-in-law called from the sink, sleeves pushed to her elbows. She was kind to me in the way a person is kind when they know kindness has become a job. My grandson carried forks with 2 hands like he was delivering tools. The fork he set by me had good weight. Heavy. It made a small sound on the wood and stayed where it landed. We ate in the rhythm families choose when they are deciding what not to say. Skin crackled. Juice ran. My son carved with a knife that would have preferred a turkey. He kept his eyes on the bird as if perfect slices could hold the room together. "Work is busy," he said. "We've got the awards dinner next week." "Business casual," I said. "Right," he said, and looked at the ceiling as if the answer lived up there. The kids finished first. They wandered off to the couch and a cartoon that spoke faster than anyone at the table. My daughter-in-law stacked plates, left mine, and wiped a ring of grease with a dishcloth in circles that got smaller until they vanished. I had brought nothing but a legal pad. It sat inside my jacket like a quiet animal. When the room found its quiet, I set it on the table and pulled off the top sheet. 2 columns. Left in blue ink, right in black. On the left, dates and amounts. 20 years of habit. On the right, a new list, shorter, printed neater. Scholarships for kids of service members. A line for the local welding program that takes teenagers who can fix anything but their luck. A modest starter fund labeled library field trips. He watched my hand the way a man watches a card turn.
What's that?
I kept my voice level. A budget. For what? For what was and what will be. He leaned back. The chair clicked against the tile and came forward again. Dad, if this is about... The support ends tonight, I said, and it felt like setting down a pack after a long walk. The disrespect ends first. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He reached for the chicken the way people reach for props when they do not know their line. My daughter-in-law stood still by the sink and did not help him find it. I slid the page across the table. He read the left column, and I watched the math appear in his face as if numbers had a smell. He read the right column slower. His finger hovered over scholarships. You're giving it away. I am giving it forward, I said. What I used to send you goes to kids who carry a piece of the same weight you don't want on your table. That's not fair, he said, soft, which is how people say a thing when they hope volume can make it true. It is not punishment, I said. It is a change in weather. He touched the heavy fork near my plate, set it down, picked it up, set it down again. You think I don't appreciate? I think you are busy appreciating other things, I said. And I have been busy paying for the quiet that bought you that ability. He looked toward the living room. The cartoon's laugh track burst and died. My grandson's head peeked around the doorway and withdrew. I won't ask again, he said finally, like a man promising himself something. That would help, I said. We cleared the table without choreography. He took the bones. I folded the plastic. My daughter-in-law dried the plate that had been mine and handed it to me like a truce. I rinsed my hands and dried them on a towel that had a lemon stitched in one corner. At the door, I left the legal pad page on the table where the chicken had been. The paper lay flat. The 2 columns looked like a before and an after you do not need a caption for. Good night, I said. He nodded. See you at the dinner. Business. Casual, I said, and the words did not sting this time. They just sat there, ordinary as a forecast. Outside, the porch light made a small circle that touched the top step and stopped. I walked past it and felt the air change on my face, as if a window had been opened somewhere I could not see. The scratch ran the length of the driver's door, like a sentence someone wrote with a nail and didn't bother to spell. My old Ford sat under the duplex's dim porch light, the paint catching just enough glow to show the damage in a wavering silver line. For a minute I did nothing. The porch light hummed, a tired insect. Cicadas worked the trees like 100 clocks out of sync. Somewhere down the block a screen door shut and a voice said goodnight to no one in particular. I got the kit from the hall closet, sandpaper, rubbing compound, a rag I keep for jobs that do not deserve a good towel. I knelt and set my palm on the door as if I were steadying a skittish animal. The grit took the edge off the line. Back and forth, small strokes, like erasing a word you have decided not to say. A kid's bike skidded to a stop at the curb. The neighbor boy, shoulders skinny under a T-shirt, one shoelace loose, hair sticking up like he'd argued with a pillow and lost. He hovered, a respectful ghost of curiosity. That bad? He asked. Could be worse, I said. Could be deeper. He leaned the bike against the mailbox without a lock, the way you do when you trust a place enough to risk it. He dug into his shorts pocket and came up with a white tube. We got a paint pen when my mom scraped the minivan on the grocery pole, he said. It's black, but maybe it helps. I looked at the Ford's tired blue and at the tube in his hand. Black will do, I said. Truth is, this truck has been more colors than one. He offered it like an offering and sat on the curb. I joined him. Gravel pressed its pattern into the backs of my legs. The sky was between colors, leaving day without committing to night. He watched my hands. You know how to do everything, he said, which is what kids say when you can do one thing on a Thursday. I know how to do this, I said. It's just patience pretending to be skill. He nodded, filing that away. After a minute he said, Softer? My dad served. He won't talk about it. I kept sanding. Some people keep the lid on so the jar doesn't break, I said. He won't even say where. Maybe he thinks the map only points back, I said. The boy picked at the grass. He sleeps on the couch sometimes. Says the bed is too quiet. I capped the compound and opened the paint pen, shook it, pressed the tip until the paint showed. I drew the line slow, held my wrist steady. Filled the bright wound with something duller, smaller, manageable. Does he like baseball? I asked. He shrugged. Says the season is too long. Invite him to a middle school assembly, I said. Sometimes short is better. He looked at me then, the way kids do when they decide you're either wise or strange, and are willing to live with both. You talk at those, sometimes? He watched the door dry. Why would someone do that? He meant the scratch. He meant other things. Sometimes people don't know where to put the sharp they feel, I said. So they reach for the nearest surface. Does it make you mad? It did for a minute, I said. Then it made me busy. He laughed, surprised at himself. The cicadas rose, fell, rose again. The porch light hummed its same note. We stayed on the curb until the sky turned purple at the edges, and the truck looked better than it had an hour ago and worse than it did yesterday, which is a true thing about most repairs. He stood first. Thanks for letting me watch, he said. I'll bring the pen back tomorrow. Keep it, I said. You'll need it again before you think you will. He rolled the bike away in a slow half-circle, then looked back. Hey, he said. If you ever need help, I can hold a light. I know, I said. He disappeared into the hum of his own porch. I stayed until the paint set, a stoop under a single bulb becoming a porch because somebody sat on it long enough to listen. Then I went inside and washed my hands, the water turning gray and then clear, like the day had finally decided what it wanted to be. They called it an assembly and left it at that. The email from the secretary said, "Would you be willing to speak as a local veteran?" No flyer with a name, no picture. The way a church asks for bread without asking who will bake it. The gym smelled like wood varnish that had been warmed by 100 squeaky sneakers. Banners hung along the wall, State Spelling Bee, County Robotics, a faded district title for girls' volleyball. Bleachers held students in rows like birds on a line, jittering and quiet by turns. The scoreboard hummed to itself, numbers asleep. The principal met me at the double doors, tie with acorns, binder tucked under his arm. "Thank you for coming," he said, and his voice said more than his words. He did not try a handshake that would make a show of anything. He nodded toward the mic at center court, a metal stand with a thin cord taped to the floor in an X made of tired gaffer's tape. "We'll keep it simple," he said. 5 minutes. "A story." The mic squeaked when I tested it, the kind of sound that makes a room decide whether to laugh or listen. The students settled. A teacher up high pressed 2 fingers to his lips, and the whispering stopped like someone flipped a switch. The principal walked to center court. "We're fortunate to have a local veteran with us," he said. "No name." The words drifted up to the banners and came back down softer. I wore a plain sport coat. The uniform was already doing its work in the hallway case. I took the mic and held it at the height where breath and sentence meet. "I'll tell you one story," I said. "Not because it's the most important one, but because it is the right size for a morning." I kept it short. A road that threw heat. A man whose knee went bad. The way a pack gets heavier by ounces and then by ideas. I told him how I took his pack and gave it no drama. How he carried a letter instead, folded tight in his fist, edges damp, all the way back to where someone could read it out loud and believe it. We traded weight, I said, so the right thing could get home. I did not say what was in the letter. I did not say where the road ran. I did not say how long we sat after. The gym did not need that. The gym needed one image it could hold between bells. In the front row, my grandson sat with his team jacket zipped up to his chin. He was close enough that I could see the white at his knuckles where he clenched his hands together, keeping them from clapping before anyone else. That is how boys show respect when they are learning not to jump first. I finished with a line they could take to the next class. Sometimes helping is carrying the heavy thing so the fragile thing can arrive whole. Silence first. Good silence. Then the clap began in the middle. 1 student, then 2, and spread like a small wether that wanted to grow up. Kids stood. The sound hit the varnish and came back stronger. It was not for me by name. It was for the idea of a man who carried something so a letter could finish its trip. The best kind. My grandson stood last on purpose, as if he had an agreement with himself about pride and timing. He looked at the floor. He looked at the mech. He looked at his hands. Then he let them go. After, a line formed that wasn't a line. A boy with a trumpet case said thank you and meant the second word. A girl asked if the letter made it. I told her yes. A teacher with chalk on his sleeve said, "That's what we try to say in class, but you said it better." The principal stood off to the side and watched the case in the hallway through the glass, as if it were listening too. On my way out, I passed the display. The jacket sat square, the metals steady in their light. A pair of seventh graders paused and read the little card that names only a branch and the years. One of them tapped the glass twice at his thigh as if checking to see if the air had a heartbeat. Outside, the wind had that edge it gets when the month turns. I breathed and could still taste the gym's wood and the tin of the mic. There is a bank between the school and my duplex. I noticed it the whole walk to the truck. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow I will go in and put the new promise on paper. I went to the bank the next morning, the one that sits between the school and my duplex like a referee. Pens on chains. A rubber plant that has survived 3 managers. The carpet smelled like the color gray. New account or questions on an existing one? The greeter asked. New, I said. Small. Stubborn. She led me to a cubicle with walls the color of oatmeal. The banker's nameplate said L. Martinez. She had a patient face and a stack of forms already in truce with her desk. What would you like to set up? A sub-account, I said. Nickname it Quiet Valor Fund. Monthly deposit from my checking on the first. Same amount I used to send somewhere else, she typed. Purpose. Scholarships, I said. Kids of service members. Neighbors welcome. She nodded like purpose is an interest rate that improves everything. You can transfer internally and we can issue cashier's checks to schools or programs. Keeps it clean. Clean is good. She slid a form toward me. I signed where the flags told me to sign. Routing number, account number, signature match. The printer coughed up a paper that said the thing existed now, and on it the nickname looked small and right, a rowboat among bigger boats that still knows how to get across. For your first disbursement, she said. Do you have a recipient? A welding program, I said. At the Regional Tech College. I need their routing number. She looked it up, confirmed it by phone with someone who sounded like a registrar and a guard dog combined. She wrote the digits on a yellow square and underlined them once. We can wire, or you can take a cashier's check. Cashier's check, I said. I want to hand the weight to a person. What name on the remitter line? She asked. I could have said mine. Instead I said, a grateful stranger. She tilted her head, then typed it exactly that way. The machine hummed. A rectangle of watermark promise slid out and landed with that careful thump only a cashier's check knows how to make. She stamped the corner. Paid. The ink climbed into the paper and stayed. Would you like a cover letter? She asked. I wrote 2 sentences on the bank's letterhead, simple as bread. Please apply this to first semester tuition and protective gear for the welding program. Recipient will present this at registration. Thank you for teaching hands that want to work. I left the bank and knocked on the duplex next door. The boy opened it, hair still deciding what to do with the day. His mother appeared behind him, a woman who held tired like a folded sweater, neatly, for later. Got a minute? I asked. We sat on my stoop because the sun had chosen it. I told them about the fund like I was reading the rules of a game I wanted them to win. The boy's eyes found the check and stopped. For welding, he said, trying not to sound like the word had a heartbeat. For welding, I said. Tuition and a helmet that fits. His mother pressed 2 fingers to her mouth. We can't take. That's not for taking, I said. It's for using. The check is made to the college. You 2 deliver it. I'll drive if you want a ride. We drove. The registrar's office smelled like plastic binders and good intentions. The woman at the window read the name on the remitter line and smiled like something had landed in the right place. She stamped a receipt. The stamp hit wood under paper. The boy ran his thumb over the raised ink as if it were braille for luck. On the way back, he said, very quietly, my dad welded pipeline before. He said the bead is like handwriting. You can tell who laid it by how it holds. You'll write a clean line, I said. You already hold a light steady. At home I opened my blue ledger and flipped it. New page, new column heads. QVF, deposit. QVF, disbursed. On the first line I wrote today's date and 2 words that did what they promised. Neighbor. Welding. I closed the cover and set the calculator on top like a small hat. The number didn't make noise, but the room felt different, as if money had remembered its job and stood up straighter. I left before the birds remembered their lines. Thermos of black coffee in the cup holder. The baseball in my jacket pocket, scuffed to a dull gray where a boy had loved it too hard. The road out to the cemetery is 2 lanes that never hurry. Pines lean in and keep their own counsel. Dew took my boots the moment I stepped off the gravel. It climbed my laces, made the leather look younger. Flags sat in their holders at the edges of stones, small triangles that did not know wind yet. The air had that clean edge a day wears before it has to meet anyone. I walked by names I had not earned the right to say out loud, and stopped at the one I knew best. First initial. Last name 2 dates that contained too much. Someone had set a little metal emblem in the soil years ago, a star inside a circle darkened by weather. I put my palm on the granite the way you check a door to feel if the fire is on the other side. Cold as it should be. I sat. The grass gave, wet through the knee. I poured coffee into the thermos lid and held it with both hands. It tasted like honesty. No cream, no sugar. The pines whispered the way they do when no one is asking anything of them. I told him the story I had told the gym, but quieter and with the missing pieces put back. The road, the heat, his knee going from stubborn to wrong, the way a pack grows teeth if you let it. I told him about the letter he carried, how it made it where it needed to go. I told him my grandson plays third and taps his thigh twice like he learned a word no one taught him. I reached into my pocket and brought out the ball. Thumb across the seams. Index finger finding the valley it always finds. Dirt lived under the stitches. A green thread from the grass at third stuck to the cover like a line that did not want to be erased. I set the ball at the base of the stone, rolled it until it settled. "Hold this for him," I said, "just until the next game." Sun lifted behind the far line of trees in a way that made the world look like it had been wiped with a clean cloth. Light caught on the dew and made a field of small fires. Flags moved enough to prove they were not asleep. Somewhere beyond the fence a truck downshifted and remembered where it was going. I took out my phone, framed the sky and the tops of the stones without catching names, and clicked. No filters. No words on the image to explain it. I sent it to my son, no caption. He could decide what it was, mourning, proof, an invitation he did not have to answer. While I waited for nothing in particular, I poured a second cup and let it steam into my face. A rabbit moved along the edge of the hedge like a thought trying not to bump into anything. The pines kept at their whispering. The ball leaned against granite and made that odd pair look right. I stood and brushed wet from my knee. My boot left a darker print where I had knelt. It would dry and the grass would stand up and the day would go on pretending it had not noticed me. I liked that. On the way out I touched 2 flagpoles so the metal could tell me the temperature. Cold, then less cold. At the gate I looked back long enough to fix the place of the ball in my mind. If someone moved it, the gesture would still be there. That is how some offerings work. At the truck I checked the phone. No reply. That was fine. I had not asked anything. I started the engine. The thermos lid clicked shut. The pines let me go without changing their tone. He called near dusk when the street takes on the color of old coins. No small talk. "They cut my team," he said. "Can you float me 2 months?" I leaned my hip against the counter and watched the porch light blink on by timer. "I am sorry," I said, and meant it. My hand went to the ledger drawer and stayed there, resting on the wood, not opening it. "It's temporary," he said. "Severance, then the market. I just need a bridge. I cannot send money," I said. I let the words take their full size in the room. "But I can help." Silence on his end, the kind that checks a map. "What does that mean?" "I have a contact," I said. "Veteran-led nonprofit. They hire civilians, too. Good people. They like problem solvers more than titles." He exhaled. "Dad, it is not charity," I said. "It is work." Another pause. Then, softer. "Okay." I gave him the name, the email, the way to start the note. "I am writing on a recommendation." I told him I would read his resume if he wanted another pair of eyes. He said he would send it in the morning. We said good night with the careful tone of people trying to carry something delicate to the next day. By morning the yard had turned itself into a lesson about gravity. Maple leaves lay in a thick drift, red working toward brown. I pulled the tarp from the shed and shook it out. The rake's handle felt right in my hands, wood that remembers being a tree. Halfway through the first drag, a car door shut at the curb. He walked up in a sweatshirt with the company logo already ghosting at the chest from too many washes. He did not ring. He took a second rake from the shed like a man who knows where things live. No announcement, no speech. Teeth of 2 rakes found the same rhythm. We worked in rows. Pull, lift, drop. The tarp made a sound like a sail forgiving a mistake. Leaf bags stood open like patient mouths. We filled them in a slow assembly line. Air popping out as we pressed the piles down. The neighbor waved from his porch and held up a hand as if blessing the effort. My son waved back without looking up. "How is the resume?" "Ugly," he said. "I wrote it like a commercial." "Write it like a report," I said. What the problem was, what you did, what changed. He nodded file and save in his head. We moved to the strip by the curb, where the wind likes to lay its last argument. He pulled the tarp, I steadied the corners. Drag bag tie. One by one brown bodies lined the sidewalk, like soldiers waiting for the truck that would take them where they needed to go. "I emailed your contact," he said. They wrote back, "Phone screen tomorrow." Good, I said. They will ask for a story. I have a few, he said, and his mouth almost smiled. We tied the last bag. He stacked the rakes inside the shed, teeth up the way I taught him when he was small, and we were both pretending to be careful men. At the porch, he stood with his hands on his hips and looked at the yard as if it might grate us. Thanks, he said.
For what?
For saying no the way you did. I shrugged. Help is a verb, I said. Sometimes it looks like a phone number, sometimes a rake. He nodded. He stepped down the walk. At the car door he paused and looked back. You could have sent the money.
I could have,
I said. You could have not shown up. He smiled then, a real one, small but earned. See you, he said. The bags rustled in a breeze. The tarp lay folded on the porch like a flag after a parade. I went inside and waited for his email, ready to cut the words that made him small and leave the ones that held. Thanksgiving ran hot in the house. The oven door opened and shut like a mouth trying to finish a story. Steam filmed the windows until the world outside became a watercolor of cars and bare trees. On the counter, the cranberry sauce slid out of its can in one glossy piece and kept its ridges like it was proud to be identical to itself. The ring it left on the plate looked like a target. We ate late. Turkey, potatoes, beans with almonds, because a magazine once said that made them special. My chair sat on the long side of the table, not at the head. My grandson bounced his knee under the surface until his mother tapped it twice and he remembered the rules of furniture. Football murmured from the living room, polite volume, as if not to wake anything in the past. We passed dishes. We said the right short things about work and school. I took small bites and big breaths. Halfway through pie, he tried it. My son set his fork down like a prop he no longer needed and looked at the space just to the left of my shoulder. I'm sorry if you felt disrespected, he said. The sentence arrived wearing extra words as armor. It stood there, waiting to be let in. I laid my fork down so the tines did not clatter. The steam on the window thickened until even the porch light was only a coin of blur. I wasn't disrespected, I said. I was... No heat in it. No sermon. Just two verbs on the table getting their coats. He blinked once, like something had moved in the corner of the room. That's not what I meant. I know, I said. That's the trouble, my daughter-in-law looked at the pie as if the recipe might rescue us. My grandson stared at his plate, then at his hands, then at me, and I could feel him measuring when it is right to learn a new word for gravity. He tried again, my son. I shouldn't have said what I said at work. I was stressed. Stress does not write sentences, I said. People do. The fork lay where I had left it. I could feel its weight without lifting it. On the counter, the cranberry ring had bled a little red into the white plate, a halo-turned bruise. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it. The sound from the living room cheered for a play no one saw. Someone's neighbor laughed in the hall. The window gave up a drop of condensation that ran down and drew a crooked line between inside and out. I stood. The chair legs made that small wooden sigh. I walked around the table and hugged my grandson, solid and quick, the way you brace a board before you nail it. He did not cling. He just leaned enough to say he understood the language even if he did not yet speak it. I turned to my daughter-in-law. Thank you for the pie, I said. It was just right. She nodded, eyes shiny, chin set. She has learned to hold two roles in one face. I took my coat from the hook by the door. He stood, then sat, then stood again. You don't have to go, he said, and the words were right, but the tone had not yet learned how to carry them. I do, I said. I'll see you soon. Outside, the air put its hand on my cheeks and cooled them. I wiped a circle on the fog glass with the side of my fist and could see him and could not. Shapes, colors, a table that would still be a table when I was down the block. On the porch, the light hummed. A neighbor's door opened and closed. Somewhere a dog discovered a leaf and told it firmly to stop. I walked to the truck and let the door shut soft. The radio found a quiet station and failed to hold it. On the seat beside me, a clean paper napkin had ridden along from the table. Folded into quarters, warm from my hand, I unfolded it and laid it across my knee like a small flag that asked for nothing, gave nothing, and still meant something. I turned the key and let the engine find its idle. Then I pulled away before the window could clear. Some exits don't need a better view. I didn't see it, but I can picture the room. The kitchen done with its day. Lights off except the one over the sink that clicks on too bright, then gets turned back off. The dishwasher doing its low, even hum that makes a house sound like it's breathing through the night. Her text lands on his phone. No caption. Just a link in the small gray bubble that says delivered. He taps it. The screen opens to a school gym that smells like wood even through a camera. bleachers in soft blur, a mic on a pole, kids shifting, then quieting as if someone turned a volume knob only they can see. A voice starts, mine, but not wearing a name, no rank, no titles, just a tone that has learned to carry. He doesn't know it at first. Why would he? The sound comes through a phone speaker whose best days ended when a sippy cup met it 5 years ago. He leans against the counter, arms crossed. The phone lights his face the way a campfire lights a story from below, making everything look a little different. I keep it short on the video, the way I did in the room. A road that throws heat, a friend's knee that turned wrong, a pack that grew heavier until it asked the wrong questions. The trade wait for a letter. I watch my hands on the screen explain none of that, only the space in front of the chest where something once hung. The camera wobbles when the kids clap. It finds their faces, not mine, and stays there. He watches without smiling. A parent somewhere near the microphone coughs. You can hear the varnish squeak each time the principal takes a step. A boy in the front row looks like someone he knows and doesn't. The video keeps running. The person filming follows the small tide of students as they spill into the hall. The image tilts, then steadies. A glass case comes into view, catching the fluorescent light in a thin blade. A jacket sits square behind the glass. Metals rest beneath, no nameplate. The lens drifts closer. Ribbons come into focus. One frayed edge, the red gone to rust along a line a thumb once favored. He stops the video there. Pinch, zooms with 2 fingers. The crack in his screen protector runs exactly through the ribbon. He lines it up anyway. That edge, the place a small boy used to tug while asking why colors mean what they mean, finds him before the rest of the picture does. He rewinds, lets it play again. This time he hears something in the voice he pretended not to hear. The shape of syllables he learned in a smaller kitchen, the kind a man keeps even when he isn't trying. He lifts his eyes from the phone to the dark window and sees his own face in it, and behind it a room where a family ate pie and someone left early because a sentence came missing its teeth. The dishwasher breathes. The house keeps its promises. Chill. The click of the ice maker waking for a job it takes too seriously. He scrolls to the start and watches the story a 3rd time, and the 4th, because repetition can sand a thing true. When it ends he does nothing for a full minute. His thumb hovers over a blank text. The keyboard waits. He types Dad, then backspaces until the field is white and empty again. He sends her a single word thanks. Then he sets the phone face down on the table as if to let it cool. He stands there with both hands on the back of a chair, trying the weight. The night outside holds its breath. In the window, the metal's frayed ribbon sits on the glass, not moving at all, and still it has more to say. He walks to the sink and turns the light on. Not bright anymore, just enough. He opens a drawer, finds a pen, and writes a date on the corner of a junk mail envelope. Not a note, not yet. Only a reminder a man makes when he knows he has somewhere to be and can't say it out loud. Saturday. Parade. Legion Hall. The parade formed on Main where the road is widest. November air carried the sound of tuning brass and the sugar smell of kettle corn. Kids lined the curb with grocery sacks for candy that comes wrapped and thrown. I stood back a step from the crowd, hat pulled low, hands in my coat. The Legion float waited near the corner, plywood sides painted with an eagle that had seen better summers. A high school drumline found a beat and kept testing it. Flutes trilled and then backed off, as if asking permission. The color guard practiced their turns. Flags flashed and settled. Behind me someone asked if the coffee stand took cards. It did not. The parade stepped off. Fire engines eased by with lights turning slow, their sirens kindly. A tractor pulled a trailer full of scouts who waved with both arms, proud and awkward. A group of nurses came next in scrub tops and winter coats, holding a banner that made room for names lost to longer years and shorter odds. The Legion float rolled after them, men and women sitting on hay bales, a heater the size of a milk crate making its small red glow near their boots. An empty space waited on the end of the bench where a person could sit and be clapped at. I watched it pass. I kept to the sidewalk. I nodded when someone nodded. I raised a hand when the drum major's mother raised hers to me. I took the paper cup of hot chocolate the church youth group pressed into my glove and let the steam warm my face. Halfway down the block, between the hardware store and the barber with the candy cane pole, I felt a presence the way you feel weather coming around a house. He was there, hands in his pockets, coat zipped, eyes wet in the cold or not entirely in the cold. Hey, he said. Hey, I said. We stood like 2 men looking into a shop window that held something both of us might buy if we knew what to do with it. The band from the middle school swung into a march they loved and mostly kept. Their breath made little clouds with each bar. I watched that video again, he said, eyes on the street. And the case. I sipped and waited. He took his hands out of his pockets and put them back in. "Are you speaking at the hall next week?" he asked. "I'd like to come." It was the right sentence. "Not sorry. Not a repair laid on too thick. Just a door." "I am." I said. 7. He nodded once. Like acceptance can be a motion you keep small so it does not scare. We watched the tail of the parade. A flabid carrying the marching band's percussion wrapped things up. 2 cymbals kissed and laughed at themselves. "Walk." I said, "Yeah," he said. We fell in beside each other and let the crowd open to let us through. Leaves crackled underfoot where a street sweeper had missed. Shopkeepers stood in their doorways with hands tucked under their arms, counting faces they knew. A boy in a knit hat tugged his mother's sleeve and pointed at the empty bench on the Legion float now parked by the square. She said, "Maybe next year." He said, "No, this one." The Legion Hall stood a block past the square, brick warmed by the weak sun, glass door taped with flyers for fish fry and bingo and a winter coat drive. Through the glass I could see a trumpet case open on a chair and a man rubbing a mouthpiece with a cloth that had been washed 100 times. A snare drum ticked once. Stop. Tick. Stopped. Breath, then note, then silence. We reached the steps. He paused like a person taking measure of a rise that is not about height. I held the door. He took it from me. We went inside where the heat met us without questions. Down the hallway someone counted off. The band lifted its sound and let it fall. We walked toward it. 2 men finding the same room from different years, not quite in step yet, close enough for the beat to find us if it wanted to. In the end, what remains is not the medals or the reserved seats, but the way a father keeps his dignity when doors are shut. When I set the uniform in the hallway case, it belonged to the community. When I placed a cashier's check in a neighbor boy's hand, it belonged to the future. When I walked beside my son toward the hall, the rest belonged to time, no grand finale. Only warmth returning in small degrees. Thank you for staying with this story to its last page, and for giving your time to an ordinary voice telling of unordinary choices. Your presence keeps Dad's last revenge alive, not by noise, but by quiet breaths. A few gentle reminders: choose dignity before rebuttal when you are diminished. Say no to what harms you, even when it costs you. Carry someone's pack so a fragile letter can make it home. An apology with if is not an apology. Set boundaries with action, not argument. And send forward a good thing you have held too long. If this touched you even a little, please share it with a son, a father, or a friend who might need a door to open again. Leave a comment with the one thing you still mean to say to someone you love. Subscribe to Dad's Last Revenge, tap like, and turn on the bell. Every share is a small ticket that helps an important letter reach the right address. See you in the next chapter, where we will not chase loud revenge, but look for the warmth we forgot to keep.